Good afternoon, everybody, and although I'm speaking to a vacant, almost vacant public gallery, can I remind those who will sit in it that today's proceedings are being broadcast. After a 10-minute delay, mobile telephones may be used to say what the person has heard during our hearings, but only after 10 minutes have elapsed. They may not be used for photography or recording. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Doyle, we left before lunch speaking about the Bermondsey March, the anti-fascist march. Can I ask that the following document be put up on screen? MPS 0005927. It's behind tab B287 of the MFJ bundle. This is a document dated the 14th of May 2001. It relates to an event at Bermondsey on Saturday the 12th of May. Is this the same event that we were talking about just before lunch?
I believe it was. See, I struggle. I know there was three marches that the NF did that summer in Bermondsey. But I can only remember us mobilising for one, so I think it was the same one. But it could be one of the other ones. But sorry. I think it was the same one.
At this event, when people start to disperse, there is an incident where people deemed as fascists run off into an estate. And I'll give you a moment just to have a look over the report. But it's reported that people from MFJ also take chase, and there's a sense that there was an intention to chase and beat up the fascists once they had left off into the estate. What do you recall about that incident?
Again, this is one of those incidents with Dave with Hagen that really sticks into my mind, because I can't recall the confrontation with fascists that he talked about and that Alex talked about, but I remember vividly that a group of the group of fascists ran off into an estate. So there was a road into an estate with big built-up buildings either side, and they ran off round the corner, and Hagen was absolutely determined to go after them. The only reason, I can't obviously remember his exact words, but it would be, we've got them on the run. He wanted to go and give them a beating. And myself and Alex were like, absolutely not. We're not doing that. We're leaving the area. And it's really weird how he presents it, that there were people who were against that decision, because my memory, the only person from Movement for Justice who was against that decision to leave the area was Dave Hagen. I hadn't remembered, I know Alex said he called him a coward, I hadn't remembered that, but I remember his sense of being just incensed that we wouldn't go after these guys into the estate, and that memory just really sticks in my head.
Another event that you make reference to in your statement, at paragraph 80.23.4, is the event of an NF march, a National Front march in Dover on the 5th of December 1998. The document is MPS 0001572. If we can have that up, please. Simply says a small group from MFJ and Class War will be in Dover on Saturday the 5th of December to oppose the National Front March. What can you tell us about that event?
Hagen had been raising this National Front mobilisation in the Movement for Justice meeting, and with us as individuals, so with me, with Alex, with other people, and he was trying to get people to go. No one wanted to go to Dover, like no one wanted to go to Dover. I was trying to be supportive and encouraging of someone who wanted to do something, and so I said, okay, I'll go with you to Dover, and it was literally me and Hagen in his car and him driving us to Dover. It was just, the small group was me and Hagen. That's it. And when we got there, we didn't actually join the anti-fascist demonstration. Well, there wasn't much. It was all over the place. We just kind of walked around the area, and I have a vivid memory of walking along the seafront with Hagen and a senior police officer walking towards us and saying, "All right, Karen." And I remember being really like, what was that? Why is this person saying my name? Why is this police officer? And obviously I know now because they were told Movement for Justice would be there. But yeah, the only reason I was there was because I felt bad for Day Hagen. I felt bad that he was raising this issue and no one wanted to go.
And you were quite clear that an officer had spoken to you, knew your name.
Yeah.
Did you become involved in any disorder at that event?
No, I was just walking around Dover.
Did David Hagen become involved in any disorder?
No.
You've spoken about opposing far-right marches in the sense that you would try and enclose the march or stop other youths from the area engaging with the march or joining the march.
Yeah.
To what extent does that involve physical confrontation between you, the march itself, and any of the march supporters in the community?
Any of the fascists? Very, very little. I've actually not been on an anti-fascist mobilisation where we had contact with the fascists. So most of the time it was trying to block an area. So trying to block an area or trying to make it so that the police had to enclose the fascist march to make it harder for people to join them. So, there wouldn't be any contact. And any of the ones, obviously, there was stuff before I was involved. But like I say, Movement for Justice during that period did very little anti-fascist activity. We would go to anti-fascist demonstrations, but it wasn't our main focus of work.
In terms of being there at the event, would you encourage others to become involved in any physical confrontation with the people that were there? No.
We took the safety of our group incredibly seriously. Like, say we had a group of 10, 20 Movement for Justice people on a demonstration that wasn't organised by us, so we don't have any control or say over how that demonstration goes. We were always incredibly security conscious and aware and wanting to keep people safe both from police and fascist violence. That was very much in MFJ what we did. We kept people safe. We felt a deep sense of responsibility for anyone we brought on a demonstration.
Can I display, please, MPS 0001111? It's behind tab B12. So this is in relation to what's deemed as an anti-IRA demo in Whitehall. And we can see that you attended this march. The date is the 29th of March 1998. That's the date of the report. And the second paragraph says that a number of skirmishes developed through the course of events, primarily led by Karen Doyle and Alex Owolade, although nobody was either arrested or appeared badly hurt by the scuffles. In terms of the description of skirmishes led by you and Alex and the scuffles, what can you tell us about that?
First of all, it wasn't an anti-IRA demonstration, it was an anti-fascist demonstration. What does it even mean? What does skirmishes mean? I have to think, if there was ever a time where I was on a march and I was throwing punches at the police or telling people to pick up rocks and throw them. I have to think that that would actually be reported in these things that they're reporting on. The fact that they're not, that the absolute most that would have happened is that kind of maybe push and pull with the police. But I have to think if there was anything more serious than that, it would have been reported on. But there wasn't. I mean, skirmishes is a military term, I think. Like, although nobody was either arrested or appeared badly hurt by the scuffles. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Can we display, please, MPS 0748392 at page 4. You can see at paragraph 3. This is in relation to, it's a report that we looked at earlier. We can have the first page up. It's the Stephen Lawrence Campaign Associated Organisations. So this is something, it's the second page, something that was drafted on the 10th of September 1998. So it's a branch note, an SDS document that is summarising those associations around the Stephen Lawrence campaign. And page 4 then, paragraph 3, it notes that the MFA are not afraid to instigate disorder should it be politically advantageous. They hope to be offered the lead should any positive or direct action be contemplated, and should this occur they will call for community action against the 5 suspects. This is something that we've looked at in some detail during the course of this tranche, and it's when the 5 suspects thought to be the killers of, or who were the killers of Stephen Lawrence attended at the Stephen Lawrence inquiry at Hannibal House that day. Were you there on that day when the 5 suspects attended?
See, originally I thought I was, but actually I was there in the morning. I was in the queue when we were trying to get in, but I don't think I was there when they came out. I've looked at all the footage. I remember I was working full time through that period, and there was changes to the dates on which they would appear. And I think I had booked leave for a previous date, and I couldn't get leave for the rest of that day. Because I don't think I was there when they came out, but I was definitely in the queue in the morning.
Okay. And were you part of that demonstration to try and get what we've heard of it,
the overflow room?
The overflow room, the monitors in that other room.
I was part of that.
It goes on to say that the MFJ are not likely to seek to start disorder on the march. Rather, they are hoping to build a mood of militancy that will attract other extremist groups. That sense of militancy we've looked at in some detail, particularly in relation to groups like YRE, Youth Against Racism in Europe. What was your sense of militancy, if indeed you were looking to build a mood of militancy?
First of all, I want to say something about the word militancy, because I heard the whole exchange with the YRE evidence about the word. And we used it a lot in the early days of Movement for Justice, and it really did come from the kind of trade union movements of the 80s, the miners' strike, that kind of sense of you had the trade unionists who didn't want to invoke industrial action or demonstrations or do pickets, and then you had the militant trade unionists who were, so we used it a lot. I actually remember Movement for Justice having a discussion about the word in this period, and we stopped using it simply because that historical connection to the word was lost. And so when we said the word in flyers, people didn't understand what it meant anymore. So we actually stopped using that word at a certain point, because I mean it's like for example the question of Black and Asian, or the Black community in the 70s and 80s. The Black community included Asian people, and there was Asian communities resisting racism who identified as Black and who had Black community campaign groups. By the time I got involved, young Asian people didn't identify as black, so we stopped using it. Words shift and change. Sorry, I know that's that's a little aside, but your question was, I mean, first, hoping to build a mood of militancy that will attract other extremist groups. What is it talking about? I have no idea what it's talking about.
So that wasn't something that was on the agenda in your meetings, that the march to call for the 5 killers to be prosecuted or jailed, that wasn't something that was discussed amongst you as a group and we're going to build a mood of militancy?
No, we were concerned with building a mass movement. We didn't believe that change can come only from court hearings and public inquiries. We believed it took a molecular mass protest of people organising on all fronts to win justice, to win change. And history proves that truth. And that was what we were trying to build.
Can I take you to MPS 0002582, please, behind tab B18. It's a report dated the 1st of November 1999. And apart from the financial problems, paragraph 3, please. The final factor for MFJ is that they appear to be out of favour with just about every other group. The fallout from the Lawrence inquiry appears to be continuing from MFJ in that they are considered to be highly disruptive troublemakers. A clear example of this is that MFJ were not invited to take part in the Downing Street demonstration organised by the United Family and Friends group on the 30th of October 1999. Do you recall that group initiative, the United Family and Friends group?
I know the United Family and Friends group. I don't recall that specific demonstration.
Do you recall that you were excluded from joining that because there was a sense that you were troublemakers?
No, I don't recall that at all.
Was there any sense that following the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, and particularly the day after the the suspects had attended, there was a sense that MFJ weren't welcome at the inquiry because of the disorder that had occurred on the day that the 5 suspects attended?
No, I don't recall that. I don't recall ever being told don't come to the inquiry or anything like that.
There was no sense of that amongst the groups. Can I ask you about MPS 0004973? This is part of a document. It doesn't have a particular date. It's not signed by anybody, but it's understood, the inquiry understands it to be an SDS management document that was originally dated 11th of January 2001, or at least that's the metadata that we have on it. And it's looking at the requirement levels of intelligence from different groups. And if we can turn to page 2, please, we can see that there is reference to Movement for Justice and the requirement level there. Whilst it said this group is not overtly violent, they have the resources and organisational ability to cause public order problems. They partake in street protest and will seek to influence the community into supporting their agenda. And this is done by using local issues as a basis of protest whilst maintaining There's a record of an interview that I'd like to refer you to. It's MPS 0721934. And this is in relation to what Robert Lambert, Detective Inspector Robert Lambert, said in his interview in 2013. Page 7, please. On this page, he said that you were optimistic that there would be, and this is looking at his perspective from when he was an operative in the SDS. So we heard about his evidence in Tranche 2, and this is him giving an example of how he saw the context of things when he was an SDS operative. He says this: you were optimistic that there could be a flashpoint to trigger the level of public disorder which you as a revolutionary wanted. You believed that this was the prelude to the revolution that you lived and breathed, and so that was the world that the SDS field officers on the far left lived in. And page 10, please. I think it may be internal page 10. Can I just have a look on page 11, please? Sorry, sir. It's the point where it appears that across the left there were direct taskings to Lawrence, and he says that the left-wing groups the SDS were targeting would want to be inside the Stephen Lawrence campaign. They would want to be in the meeting, they would want a speaker on the platform. Don't know if that's there on... yes, it is on, page 11, internal page 10. It's the bit that has been redacted and gisted at item 6. Would you share those sentiments that as an activist on the left wing, that you'd want this trigger, something like a justice campaign, to almost like a bandwagon or a platform on which to be able to incite more of a movement to bring about a revolution? You'd want to be there. You'd have this platform to be able to speak and put forward your bigger picture view. Does anything resonate with what Bob Lambert says here from his experience as a left-wing activist?
It's laughable. It's laughable, the notion that we were thinking there was going to be something that led to the revolution. I mean, if just think for a minute about all the reports that we've actually seen from Hagen during that period, and setting aside this madness of the SDS about their delusions of what they were saying, there's evidence of us writing a list of questions for the Chief Superintendent of Brixton Police, meeting with police officers, going to Lambeth Police Community Consultative Group meeting, having a stall, open meetings, public meetings, and there's no evidence of violence, arrests, public disorder, there's just none. And so they sprinkle these justifications on top, and it upsets me, because Movement for Justice, we would never want to take over a family campaign. That was completely the polar opposite of why Movement for Justice was set up. We were set up as not a family campaign group. We didn't win for Shah. His attackers walked free. We set up something that was about something different, that was about building a movement that could win justice, that could see Stephen's murderers jailed, that could see Roland Adams' murderers, more than one, jailed, that could see the victims of racism and racist attacks being treated as human beings and not criminals. And that's what we wanted. It really upsets me that the family campaigns have been shown this evidence that suggesting that this is what Movement for Justice's aims were. It really upsets me that they would think that that's our aim. It wasn't. This is the SDS delusion and racism and how they viewed the black community, and Movement for Justice is a convenient scapegoat. That's all we are. And what the police have done when they've apologized to those black families and they've said, oh, we're really sorry, but you were just collateral damage. It was this violent group over here. That is shameful gaslighting of those families, because it is not true. Those apologies mean nothing, because it is not true. None of this is true about Movement for Justice's intentions and our politics and what we did. And in fact, the reports back that up.
Ms. Doyle, I would like to ask you specifically about the Stephen Lawrence campaign. Would you like a moment, or are you happy to carry on?
Go ahead.
There is obviously a view that I need to put to you for your evidence, for you to be able to tell us what your experience and what your recollection is. So it may also be emotional because of the nature of the evidence that I'm asking you to give. At paragraph 80.12.4, the reports on the MFJ's decision to become involved in the Lawrence inquiry are set out in a number of documents. I don't need to go to them just at the moment. You do make reference to MPS 001113. But in essence, what that says is that it was after attending the inquiry daily for a couple of weeks that the MFJ had a discussion about getting more actively involved with the Stephen Lawrence campaign. Is that your recollection? Do you recall that you had been attending the inquiry and then it was a matter that was taken back to the group as to whether you were going to support?
We did. I do remember us having discussions. I mean, public inquiries were not something that, at that point, that Movement for Justice kind of really thought about much or had much perspective on. But I remember we went to it. Obviously, it just to get, this isn't a bandwagon jumping. It was in our area. It was in Elephant and Castle, and it was concerned with racist attacks and police racism. So we went along to it. And the thing that changed our mind, that this was something worth being involved in, was actually there was a group of black women who, from just community members, they weren't connected to the family or they weren't connected to anyone, just community members, mainly from Lambeth and Southwark, who went every single day in the public gallery, and they organised themselves. They weren't members of any group, they organised themselves as a group, and they were really determined that public inquiry was genuinely public and had maximum involvement. And it was them that convinced us that this was something we should really spend time on. And the time we wanted to spend on it was to maximize public involvement. So we would flyer, our office in Brixton on a Saturday, we would tell people what was happening in the inquiry. We would invite them to come along. We would tell people about what significant events were. We supported those women. They organised petitions from the public gallery to the chair of the inquiry about issues when the chair would try to shut things down, or when someone was saying they wouldn't appear. And it was just really important. Their role was really important, and we wanted to support that and maximise. I think public inquiries are most effective when they're genuinely public, and when there is when the public gallery is full. The public gallery should be full here, you know, but that's when public inquiries are most effective, and we wanted to make sure that that's what happened.
There's an SDS document, MPS 0728625, which is HN81's file, the SDS file. Page 8, please. This is in particular regard to his withdrawal strategy. It's very difficult to read, but at paragraph 4.
Oh, yeah.
Do you recall reading this?
I do, because the question from the inquiry about it was actually wrong in terms of what it presented, he was saying.
On the face of the document, it appears that the SDS management were of the understanding that he'd progressed through the admittedly thin ranks of the MFJ to a position of prominence in the group, along with Alex Owolade and Karen Doyle. And now that Lewis had effectively taken a back seat, these three effectively run the show. So it appears to be saying that Alex Owolade, Karen Doyle and David Hagan were running the MFJ show. Is that right?
Absolute nonsense. Like, it's just really, I mean, so there's so many places in Hagan's reporting. I mean, he calls it bigging up. I mean, there's like the bigging up of his role through all of this, like, is really quite incredible. There is no way that you could say that Hagan was effectively running the show. It's ridiculous.
It goes on to say that WT Windmill Tilter is quite candid in admitting that he was largely responsible for their adoption of the Stephen Lawrence case, and the rest, as they say, is history.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Did he have any say in terms of the direction that MFJ were taking in relation to the Stephen Lawrence campaign?
He would have been part of those discussions that we had about the nature of public inquiries, the problems with them, the experience that we had meeting those women who were organising in the public gallery. He would have been part of those discussions, and I'm sure he had an opinion, but my understanding was pretty much everyone was on board that we should do more.
How influential was David Hagan in the group?
He wasn't. He was a member. He was a member.
So he didn't have any specific role within the MFJ at any point?
No, he didn't have any specific role. I don't actually recall him ever, like most of us, like me and Alex and everyone, like, we would make public statements on marches, we'd chant lead, we'd intervene in the police. I don't remember him doing any of that. He was just kind of someone who reliably would turn up to stuff. And not everything either. He was not doing the day in, day out door knocking in Brixton that we were doing. But he would come to events and to meetings.
Can I display, please, MPS 0721026. This is behind tab B325 of the MFJ bundle. So just for the record, I didn't say that previous document was behind tab B34 of Miss Doyle's bundle. This is a record of a meeting between HN81, Mark Ellison QC and Alison Morgan on the 22nd of October 2013. Page 9, please. There is a comment that he was there at the Lawrence inquiry to, and in quotes, stop the likes of the MFJ taking over. What do you say about the suggestion that there was any intention to take over the Lawrence inquiry or the Lawrence campaign?
It's rubbish. I mean, they knew that what they were doing was wrong. They knew that if the Lawrences knew that there was an undercover police officer spying on them, that they would be not happy. And this is just them trying to justify it. This is just them trying to make the indefensible defensible. That's it.
He says at the top of that extract that I was selected for a reason. Sorry, if we can have that a bit enlarged. The suggestion is that he was not an average police officer in his beliefs. He was selected because I have strong attitudes against racism. Bob Lambert expressed similar outrage. I was very effective because I was not a racist. I went in to deal with public disorder. I was my own moral compass. My management were making decisions, but I was not in there to smear the Lawrences. I'm very supportive of their position. The fact that he says he was not a racist, do you accept that somebody can 100% not be a racist or believe they are not a racist, yet still write reports in the way that you have seen them written, which seem to have either an unconscious bias or are written in a certain way because it's part of the policing culture and the information that is being sought?
I believe that he believes he's not a racist. And I assume he genuinely believes that, and it's clearly something that's quite like it comes up in multiple places. Like he feels quite defensive of that. I think when you actually look at the volume of reports and you look at the way the black community was talked about, the way Movement for Justice was talked about, the focus on race constantly. There was a place where he said in one of his reports, we were going to meet with the GLA, the police authority. We had a meeting with them over something. And Alex and Tony were going. And we were also wanting to send someone else, a black woman who was prominent in Movement for Justice at that time. And he said, they want to do that so there's a black face. That's racist. That's racist. First of all, Alex was black. You wouldn't use a term like blackface in that way if there wasn't some racism going on. His reports throughout really do drip with prejudice. Now, he may believe he's not a racist in the sense of he would stand against a violent racist attack, or he'd be against someone using the N-word. But that isn't the sole sum of racism. Racism is pervasive, and it's often unconscious, or people think it's unconscious. It's pervasive. It runs through his entire reporting. So no, he is racist. He may not think he is, but he is.
Without knowing anything about his background, experiences, other work he's been involved with, can you confidently still say that you believe he is racist, or that it is an approach that is taken by him that is denotes racist beliefs, or is set in a racist way without his conscious recognition of that?
I'm going to give you an example from Lambeth. So the manager who was overseeing the Lambeth Community Alarm Service, a white woman, would say things to black workers, black women workers. Oh, you should come and clean my house. She would go and touch their hair. She would give breaks to the white workers that she didn't give to the black workers. Alex organised a campaign to defend 2 black women workers in that section who were being victimised by this racist manager. And he called her a racist. He said, she's a racist. And she said, no, I can't be racist. I'm married to a black man. She was married to a Nigerian man. This racism, people don't understand racism.
Sorry, was that the manager?
That was the manager.
Married
the white
to,
manager was married to
white manager married to a black
man.
Yes. But she said that denotes she's not racist.
She said that's not what that's why she's not racist. Men marry women, they can still be sexist and misogynist and violent. The social proximity and your own perception of yourself does not make racism. Racism is expressed in a million different kind of social interactions and prejudices. Someone who considers themselves not racist can still be racist.
Thank you. Page 10 on this document, please. It says that the MFJ may take advantage of the pressures on the couple, and this is relating to Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence. Sorry, I don't have the paragraph number in front of me. Thank you. And further down the page it says that there were wolves circling the Lawrences.
Can I just say one more thing on that? I haven't obviously had time to look at all the discovery for all the periods where they were spying on, like the Hunt Sabs or Reclaim the Streets or anything like that. But I'm guessing there wasn't the same, this is a majority white meeting and there's all these white people doing, like they weren't focusing on race in those. They focused on race in our reporting because of their racism. Because of their racism. Sorry, I just wanted to say that. It was entirely reporting on the race of people in the meetings, saying that a march was not going to be violent because there was no black people on it. Like, it's throughout all of the reports. And I'm guessing there wasn't the same focus of race when it came to spying on some of the other groups.
In relation to that, is there any sense that the reporting on race could have been because the issues were very focused on race and racism within the police? It was about black people in particular being stopped and searched, a disproportionate level of that. So race was very much a part of the campaigning focus, whereas it wasn't in the Hunt Sabs.
Good question. And it isn't just the mention of race, it's the mention of race in the context of violence and public disorder and agitating parents and ulterior motives and the presenting kind of this false dichotomy between the good, respectable black person who is not violent and these very terrible violent black people who are demonstrating. All of that is racism. All of that is racism.
Going back to page 10 here, the suggestion that the MFA may take advantage of the pressure on the couple. Obviously, we know that there was immense pressure on Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence surrounding the Stephen Lawrence campaign and the inquiry. And the suggestion at the very end of this extract that there were wolves circling the Lawrences. This presentation of groups, politically activist groups that were wanting to, in some way, take advantage of what they were going through, or the campaign itself, the inquiry itself. What do you say about that? Was that ever a part of MFJ's modus operandi?
No, absolutely not. And, you know, why I wrote this incredibly long witness statement is to put the truth of what we were doing during that period in the public domain, because I'm absolutely incensed that this lie is what is being told. So no, it is absolutely not true, and it's just wrong. The police, what they needed, there was no wolves. So the wolves that were circling the Lawrence were the police, who were doing everything they could to try and defend themselves, make themselves look better, instead of just doing what the Lawrences were asking them to do, and investigating fairly and prosecuting the people who murdered their son. That's it. All this other stuff is just the SDS delusion.
We've heard some evidence about the fact that it was understood Imran Khan, Casey, the lawyer for the Lawrences, was protecting them from some of the political intervention that there may have been. And similarly, Suresh Grover from the monitoring group was very much part of the family group and the go-between with the Stephen Lawrence support groups. Can you explain from a movement for justice perspective, what was the setup in terms of the Stephen Lawrence family, the Stephen Lawrence campaign, and the support groups? Where did MFJ come into that organisation?
We weren't a part of the Lawrence family campaign or the support group. I actually didn't know that there was two separate groups. I don't recall ever knowing that. We attended the public inquiry. We were organising around that time. We called the National Civil Rights March. We went to the public meetings, so there was public meetings in the inquiry that one of those groups, either the support group or the Lawrence Family Campaign, would have called. We went to them. And the thing that really gets me about those reports, about those meetings, was, you know, most of Hagan's reporting on Movement for Justice activities, and we were doing a lot of activities before the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, during and after. You know, it's one page, 1 or 2 paragraphs. No violence, peaceful, haven't got any money. The reporting on the Lawrence inquiry, those public meetings were pages, like they were 2 full long pages, and they reported on everything that everyone said. For example, that there was one that reported on everything that everyone said, and a Movement for Justice clearly didn't even speak in the meeting, because all it says was, oh, and Movement for Justice was thinking this, you know, because we were discussing afterwards. Like, it was not, this was not about Movement for Justice. This was a decision to spy on the Lawrence inquiry and the Lawrence family.
At paragraph 127 of his witness statement, I don't need to bring it up, he says, HN81 says that he was not chosen or asked by MFJ to befriend the Lawrence family. Is that right?
Well, no one in Movement for Justice befriended the Lawrence family. It just wasn't a thing. I don't recall us actually having much interaction with the Lawrence family. We mainly would have spoken with Suresh Grover at public meetings. That's it.
Was there anybody that spoke to Mr. or Mrs. Lawrence? At paragraph 80.12.19 of your statement, you say that Alex Oluwade and Lewis may have talked directly to the Lawrences rather. Is that something you actually recall, or?
No,
assume?
That's just me guessing. If anyone in Movement for Justice was going to speak to them, it would have been one of those two. But like, I genuinely can't recall ever seeing or having an interaction with the Lawrences during that period.
Was there a distinction between Alex Oluwade and Lewis having interaction with maybe the family group, Suresh Grover, and the more general interaction that MFJ would have with the wider group? Is there a distinction between the two, or not really?
Not really. I mean, we would have, we had demands. So we had, we were calling, I think I put a list from the Civil Rights March. We were calling for Paul Condon to be sacked. We were calling for Stephen's murderers to be jailed. We were calling a much wider demands about police brutality and other racist attacks. And immigrant rights. And we were the only ones during that inquiry who were making the point about, so at that time, the Labour government were introducing a new white paper, Faster, Firmer, Fairer, which was like their first big attack on asylum seekers. And we were making the point that there is a history of the Labour Party, on the one hand, introducing things like the Race Relations Act, things that are offering something to settled black communities, things like the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, and on the other hand, attacking newer black and Asian immigrants. So we were making wider political points. We wanted to kind of expose what was happening, and we were campaigning against that Immigration and Asylum Act as well. So, but that was what we were doing.
It's said in paragraph 122 of HN 81's statement that MFJ were barely tolerated by the Lawrence campaign. Can you shed any light on that? Was that your understanding?
No. I mean, I can't. We went to I don't recall any interactions with the Lawrences, genuinely.
I know you weren't there on the day. Your evidence is that you were on the day that the 5 suspects attended the inquiry. You were there in the morning to demonstrate it and have the monitor put into the side room. You weren't there when they left the building. Was there a premeditated plan amongst the Movement for Justice group that some disorder or physical demonstration would be conducted at the time that the 5 left the inquiry?
Only that we wanted to ensure there was a demonstration. We wanted to ensure that those murderers felt the anger of the community at them, because they hadn't experienced that up until that point. So yeah, we wanted a demonstration.
And that was it planned to be vociferous and a physical showing of anger, as opposed to what we understood the Lawrences wanted was to turn their backs on the 5.
Yeah, no, we wanted anger. We wanted them to feel the anger, that we wanted them to feel it. Absolutely, we wanted them to feel it.
And in that sense, although there were only a relatively small number of MFJ people attending on that day, did they whip up some of the anger, the disorder on that occasion?
No, I mean, it was like, 500 people. Movement for Justice were like 5 people? I don't think we had that many people there when the murderers were leaving. And the crowd was actually spread out over a really wide area, so there was people all down like the entrance ramp, and then people in the road. There was no whipping up to be done. These were people who they'd actually seen, most of them had seen on the news the murderer's entry into the inquiry, where they were like this, come on, they were really aggressive, and they made the decision to come down. It didn't need whipping up. People were angry.
So is there any sense that the MFJ mobilised a direct attack on the 5 suspects?
No, absolutely not.
Can I have on display, please, MPS 0001145? This is behind tab B46 of the MFJ bundle. In the comment that I think is towards the end of the page, so again this is in relation to the Stephen Lawrence campaign. It's a report from the 23rd of June 1998. Thank you. This is to do with the MFJ demands that the issue of that the legal system deal with the five, and the issue of vigilantism against the five was raised. And due to the ongoing inquiry, it was felt prudent to allow the state an opportunity to deal with the concerns of the community before MFJ decided upon their own course of action. What was your reaction when reading this about the sense of vigilantism?
I laughed. It's just so ridiculous. Like we were some militaristic operation. The notion that we would think of vigilantism as a good thing, it's just so ridiculous. I can only laugh at it because it's just insane. It's just rubbish.
So are you saying then that what's put in this report is purely fantastical? There's no truth in it, or is it just the way that he's expressed it, which perhaps is not as you would have expressed it? Is there a kernel of truth in that there was some desire to see the five punished for what they had done?
Of course we wanted the five punished for what they had done. That was the entire point of everything. And like the notion that every so often you would get someone coming along to Movement for Justice public meetings or our weekly meetings even, who would say stupid stuff like, oh, we should go and attack them. That was not Movement for Justice policy. We would talk against that. We would tell people, no, we're not going to be doing that. So, I don't know if that's but that's not group policy. That's just the things that people say when they're angry and upset. It wasn't group policy. And it's just crazy.
So your concern here would be that something that somebody raises, whether that's seriously or in jest at the meeting, might be reported in a report that is read by the SDS customers, that actually is presented almost as if that's an MFJ position, that's what the group wants. Yeah. Is that to what extent does that concern you, that was going to other customers of the SDS and lying on a file in relation to you?
No, it makes me furious. It makes me furious that this view of Movement for Justice is what was sitting on file and may have informed interactions with the police or other groups or whatever. It makes me furious because it's just so, of course there were people who were angry and frustrated and they would have raised, attacking someone or whatever it was. Movement for Justice wasn't about that. We were the opposite of that. We were about building a movement. And that meant public actions and trying to get justice, trying to get murderers jailed, trying to get police jailed for racism. That was what our concern was. We were actually against vigilantism. We didn't agree with people going off and just being violent to someone. We would argue against that if anyone brought that to us. And it makes me it's just infuriate. I can never say that word. It's just absolutely outrageous that this is the is the record of movement for justice, and it's upsetting. It's really upsetting.
In the same way, then there's another reference which we don't need to display, but it's MPS 0001149. The report saying that MFJ are quite happy to let the 5 enter the hearing and be questioned, but see their exit as the perfect chance to mete out some summary justice. Would your response be similar in the way that it was to the sense of vigilantism?
We had no, what does that even mete out summary justice? They viewed demonstrations and anger, legitimate anger at horrific failings and racism of the police and of racists, legitimate anger, they viewed that as the problem. That was what they viewed as public disorder, anger. That was their view of public disorder. And no one should be angry at the police. But of course people are going to be angry at the police. Like, it's awful.
Do you recall whether, following that day, there was a request by the Stephen Lawrence family that MFJ shouldn't attend the following day?
I don't recall that at all. I genuinely don't recall that at all. I don't recall ever being told we shouldn't attend.
Okay.
I'm not saying it didn't happen. Maybe it was said to someone else, but I don't recall it.
Can I display, please, MPS 0001398? This is behind tab B87. It's right, isn't it, that MFJ, through Alex Owolade, did give a presentation to the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, or the Macpherson inquiry, during the second stage of that inquiry?
It's correct. Well, there was 3 people who delivered the,
what it says here is Owolade will use the opportunity to rubbish the inquiry and call for the formation of a civil rights movement. And Shah Alan, a victim of racial violence, will take the microphone from Owolade in an attempt to advertise his case. What was the purpose? What was Movement for Justice's purpose in giving evidence to the inquiry, as you recall it?
I've supplied the written statement that was given. Essentially, they read that written statement. It was reporting on the Shah Alam campaign, all of our work to get justice, and it was. Sorry, I can't actually remember the exact content, but it would have been reporting on all of those campaigns, what we've been involved in, and calling for a movement. The formation of a civil rights movement. There was already a civil rights movement. A civil rights movement is not an organisation, it's a movement. And Movement for Justice was all about, we called ourselves Movement for Justice because we wanted to build a civil rights movement. That's in all of our materials from the earliest days. So the way they phrase things, it's like the SDS can only think in terms of organisations and individuals, but that's not a true picture of what was actually happening and what we were trying to build.
And the source comment here says that this will be a direct challenge to the inquiry's decision not to hear stories from other victims.
Yeah.
Do you recall that? Was there a sense that the inquiry needed to hear from other victims of?
We did. We supported a whole number of families to meet with the inquiry. We believed that the inquiry should hear from victims of police brutality and racism and some of the campaigns for justice. That's why, we made sure Shah was there with us speaking about his case. So absolutely, we were calling on the inquiry to broaden its remit.
And it's right, is it, that there was a demonstration before and after that presentation, and any attempt to prevent Owolade or Shah Alan from speaking may be aggressively challenged. Was that ever part of the thinking of the setup for the day?
Why would we be prevented from speaking? We were invited to speak. The inquiry, we were asked to speak. Movement for Justice engaged with the inquiry throughout the whole process, and we had something important to say about racist attacks and police injustice. So why would we be stopped from speaking?
In terms of feeding into the content of those submissions, did you, other members of MFJ, have input, and was any? Did that include David Hagan?
We would have talked. We definitely would have talked about it, and the contents of it essentially was formed over the whole course of our intervention in the public inquiry. And can I just say as well, again, the way he presents Shah Alam is again an example of his prejudice. A victim of racial violence will take the microphone from Olalade in an attempt to advertise his case. It's minimising what the Black and Asian community were going through, what victims of racial violence and police brutality were going through. It's another example.
I'd like to ask you about the knowledge that Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence had split or were separating during the time of the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. Can I have on screen, please, MPS 0721973, page 3. And this is in relation to the suggestion that MFJ planned to exploit the knowledge that Doreen and Neville Lawrence were splitting up. Do you recall when it was that you learned that they were separated?
Honestly, no. I remember I was aware of it, but I can't remember if I was aware of it when it came out in public or if I was aware of it earlier. I honestly can't remember.
It's the final paragraph on this page, that Doreen and Neville splitting up. I can't really remember where it came from. I think Dwayne told the MFJ. I think I reported on it. Sorry, I should have introduced this document. That it's if we go to the first page of the document. Sorry, second. It's again the meeting with HN81 on the 9th of October 2013. And this is a note of his of that meeting. So sorry, back to page 3. And what HN81 says in relation to that is not to put that into the system seems ridiculous to me. It was before RIPA. I believe it should be intelligence. It is relevant. The MFJ were going to try and exploit it. The MFJ believe they might be able to target Neville after they'd split up. These are my thoughts. It was relevant. Under RIPA, it may not happen now as it would be sanitised. All intelligence is good. Do you have any recollection of anybody speaking about that within the MFJ group or within the wider Stephen Lawrence campaign group?
No, and it's actually it's outrageous to suggest we would try and use it or exploit it, and there's absolutely no evidence to suggest that we did or would do that.
Is it right, though, to say that you were aware of that as a group around that time?
Yeah, I think I remember being aware of it. I definitely remember being aware of it, but like I say, I can't recall where I got it from.
And was that at the time of the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, around 97, 98?
No, it would have been later, I think. Okay. So it might have been I was aware of it when it became public. The reason I don't know and I don't remember is because it wouldn't have been a thing for us. If it was a thing for us, I'm pretty sure I would remember. If we were planning to use it or exploit it, I'm pretty sure I would remember. I genuinely can't remember when I found out this information or how. You're
familiar with the document that has been shown to Suresh Grover, and it's MPS 0001212. I don't think I need to put it on display again, but it does suggest that it was Suresh Grover who, after a meeting, disclosed that information to MFJ, whoever that was in MFJ. And when that was put to Suresh Grover last week, he denied that he relayed that information. In your witness statement, you said that perhaps it was Dwayne Brooks that told us, but having read now the reports, it may be that it was Suresh Grover. Can you assist us at all with how that may have come about?
So when I was writing this, I hadn't spoken to anyone else. I didn't know anyone else's evidence, and all I had was Hagan's reports, and he had said something odd, which surprised me, which he'd said that he thought he was mates with Dwayne Brooke, which was completely news to me. Like, I don't know where that came from, and I didn't know if there was any truth in it. I know now that there's no truth in it. But, you know, same thing with seeing that it was Suresh who said it, you know, so I put it in my witness statement. I said, oh, well, that's what the report says. But honestly, I can't remember that meeting, and I have no reason to doubt Suresh Grover when he says it wasn't him. You know, I have no idea. I genuinely have no idea.
The suggestion that MFJ were going to try and exploit it, is there any truth in that there was a sense Neville Lawrence was more involved with the political campaign groups, in that he would attend some of the political meetings and would speak at meetings, as opposed to Doreen Lawrence, who in her evidence was that, well, she wasn't as engaged because obviously she was either less inclined to, or she was at home with the children. Was there a sense that Neville Lawrence might be able to be more open to a more militant approach to the bigger issue of racism in the police?
No, I don't remember any discussions about that at all.
Do you think that those might have been discussions that were taking place within the MFJ at the time? No, I think I would know it if they were. I don't recall any discussions about that. The suggestion that MFJ would perhaps seek to take over a family campaign, I think you've addressed that already, haven't you, in that two very, very different types of approaches. MPS 0721973, please. Zero 721-973. Oh, sorry. Moving on to page 3, please. Oh, we're on it. I'm sorry, sir. The reference on this page about MFJ's involvement in the Lawrence inquiry was really good news, and that it would be valuable intelligence with regards to public order issues. That was HN81's perspective as to why that it was good that MFJ got involved with the Lawrence campaign. It's in the top paragraph, but second line from the bottom of the first paragraph. So he said, I didn't suggest it, but I didn't dissuade them from getting involved. It was really good news they were going to do it. It was going to be valuable intelligence with regards to public order issues. Our involvement pretty much took up all of our time. What do you say about that? What were the public order issues in relation to MFJ's involvement in the Stephen Lawrence inquiry?
None. I don't know what they were. The day the murderers showed up was it didn't take intelligence to know that the community would want to be there, and that people would be angry. The demonstration, it was a demonstration in the queue to try and get the inquiry to open up an overflow room to make sure the inquiry was public. It was a demonstration. The public order issue was caused when the police CS sprayed the Nation of Islam. There was no other incidents that I can think of in the whole course of the Lawrence inquiry that could fit this description. We engaged with the inquiry. We attended public meetings organised by the Lawrence Family Campaign. That's it. That's it.
And the sense that your involvement in the Stephen Lawrence campaign pretty much took up all of our time. Is it right that at that time a lot of focus was put onto the inquiry, and that a lot of the efforts of MFJ were on the inquiry during that period?
Honestly, no. I mean, I've given a timeline of all our activities during that period. We maintained all of our other campaigning through that period, and some of the things we've already talked about, like the CS spray campaign, there was overlap. Like, we were still doing all of our other work, and most of us were also working, so we didn't attend the inquiry every day. We would get information from the women in the public gallery about what was happening. We'd discuss it. We'd encourage members of the public to go. But I don't think it's true that it took up all of our time. I remember us doing other stuff during that period as well. I mean, we were campaigning against the Firmer, Faster, Fairer, the Immigration Act. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we were doing lots of things.
The comment about bigging himself up to the management in relation to his influence over going to the Stephen Lawrence campaign and the inquiry is here just at the bottom, just for the record.
That's definitely true.
Finally, on the Stephen Lawrence inquiry matter, I want to refer to HN81's meeting with Richard Walton. That is referenced in MPS 0728625, please. If you scroll down, next page. This is HN81's file, page 12 to 13, please. This details a meeting that HN81 had with Bob Lambert, or Robert Lambert, the DI at the time, and who authors this note, this file note, SDS file note, on the 18th of the 8th, 98. And he says that on Friday, the 14th of August, I had a meeting with Windmill Tilter, HN81, and Richard Walton. Richard Walton was currently working with the Stephen Lawrence review team that was working on the Commissioner's submissions to the Lawrence inquiry at the end of phase 1. And HN81 was asked to meet with him and give his perspective on the inquiry and give some indication, some insight into what was happening with the community and the inquiry, the campaign. And it's noted that it was a fascinating and valuable exchange of information concerning an issue which, according to RW, continues to dominate the Commissioner's agenda on a daily basis. And RW thanked WT for his invaluable reporting on the subject in recent months. An in-depth discussion enabled him to increase his understanding of the Lawrence's relationship with the various campaigning groups like MFJ. This, he said, would be of great value as he continued to prepare a draft submission to the inquiry on behalf of the Commissioner, and MFJ's future plans were also discussed at some length. RW explained a lot of the behind-the-scenes politics involving the Home Office, and it emerged that there is great sensitivity around the Lawrence issue, with both the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister extremely concerned that the Metropolitan Police could end up with its credibility in the eyes of London's black community completely undermined. And then RW explained the three main areas that his team is addressing. Just on that point then, this relationship between the Lawrences and the campaigning groups like the MFJ, relatively little to report on your account and your recollection of what was happening at that time.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
And in terms of the draft submissions to the inquiry on behalf of the Commissioner, is this at a time when you were gathering your own submissions as well for the second phase of the inquiry that was to take place?
Yeah, it would have been.
Beginning of that later on. In terms of bullet point 2, just below, this second stage of the public inquiry, RW explained that the Commissioner plans to stage a series of public forums in the months ahead at which he will attend personally and set out the Met's position. One proposed venue was Lambeth Town Hall, and WT was advised to advise RW of the vulnerability that such a meeting would have to disruption from MFJ and local black youth. Was there likely to be disruption if the Commissioner attended at Lambeth Town Hall in relation to the public inquiry?
No, and it's... Movement for Justice never once disrupted the public inquiry. We saw it as a really valuable thing. It was the first time that there was a public spotlight across the nation on the issue of police racism and failures to deal with the kind of pervasive racist attacks that were happening. Why would we want to disrupt that? It was absolutely the opposite of what we wanted to do. We wanted to maximize that inquiry. We wanted it to be broader. We had no intention to disrupt it. And again, it's this, vulnerability to disruption from MFJ and local black youth. It's this demonization of the black community and black youth that runs throughout all this reporting that does not bear any relationship to the actual things that were happening on the ground, even on the basis of Hagan's reporting. Even if you take just on the basis of his reporting, it does not bear that out.
Lambeth Town Hall, was that where MFJ had been having the meetings with the Lambeth...
Police Community Consultative Group, yeah. They were largely at the Town Hall.
So the Police Consultative Committee,
yeah.
That was based at Lambeth Town Hall. And so there had been many occasions where you had been there with Chief Superintendent Foy discussing issues about policing.
Yeah.
So had the Commissioner attended to talk about the second stage of the public inquiry, what was the risk of public disorder?
We would have attended the meeting. There was no risk of public disorder. We would have attended the meeting and we would have intervened in the meeting. Okay. We may have had a demonstration outside, but primarily we would have intervened in the meeting.
And finally then, in terms of the last paragraph there, as regards the second stage itself, there continued to be daily discussions with RW's office as to the best tactics to adopt, and the question of the Commissioner's resignation and that of his assistant Ian Johnson is regularly addressed. In terms of the second stage of the public inquiry, that's of course when you yourselves were going to be putting in your submission, and we've established that. Thank you. So that may be a convenient moment for the afternoon break.
Certainly. Is 10 minutes long enough?
10.
10 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Just before we leave the Stephen Lawrence campaign, please, I suggested to you that where there was a separation between Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence, it was Neville Lawrence that had attended more of the meetings with the different support groups. Do you accept it's right that Neville Lawrence wasn't political, it's just simply that he was attending the meetings more than Doreen was attending the meetings because of different commitments?
I'm fine accepting that.
And given that you don't recall any contact specifically between those in the Movement for Justice and the Lawrence family, do you agree that it would be inaccurate to describe HN81 as a spy in the Lawrence family camp?
In the Lawrence family camp, yes, but I think he was a spy on the Lawrence inquiry.
What about the Lawrence, Stephen Lawrence campaign, if that is a different body, had a different nature?
Well, like I say, I wasn't or didn't remember that there was the support group in the campaign, so I can't,
so you can't
really
help with
speak
that.
at that.
Thank you. One question, please, on subversion. You were asked by the inquiry whether you considered yourself or the MFJ to be subversive in nature. What is your response to that?
No. Sorry, I don't have the definition in front of me right now.
If it helps you address it at paragraph 95 of your witness statement. But in terms of an overthrow of the
okay, so
government or state democratic processes.
Movement for Justice stood in local elections. Movement for Justice attended police consultative group meetings that the police regularly attended. We met with chief police inspectors. We campaigned in elections. We lobbied MPs and met with MPs. We marched. We protested. All of these things are deeply democratic endeavours. They are not subversive. So I absolutely reject the assertion.
Thank you. I'd like to then turn to the withdrawal of HN81 from his deployment. You recall in your witness statement a time when you arranged to meet David Hagan or in Victoria. Do you recall that time? And you think it was probably around the summer of 2001. And he confided in you, didn't he, as you recall, about his depression and disillusionment.
Yeah.
You've already described him as somebody who came across as quite a depressive character. What impact did that have on you at the time?
I was really I was worried for him. He sounded genuinely despondent and was talking about going back to a situation that I knew was really bad for him, and I felt bad for him, and I shared with him some of my own struggles with mental health, as a way of trying to encourage him to, keep going. I was genuinely worried about him.
Can we display, please, MPS 0006208? It's behind tab B27 of Karen Doyle's bundle. And it's paragraph 3 in particular. So this is a particular intelligence report on you. And we can see that the bit that is redacted for privacy is a reference to your own mental health.
Yeah.
And it says, this is a common trait of revolutionaries as they wait for the revolution to happen. When this occurs, she disappears off for a while, but otherwise appears hugely confident, highly intelligent, and of a bubbly personality. What do you say about your mental health struggles being included within a report, a very personal report on you, and the comment about it being a common trait of revolutionaries?
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's so dismissive, you know, and the fact that he's now using mental health as an excuse not to appear before this inquiry is ironic. But it, you know, I went back and forth about that privacy redaction because on the one hand, you know, I'm not ashamed of the fact that I've had mental health struggles, and it's something I've talked about a lot. But the way he put it was so sarcastic and demeaning. I kind of kept the privacy notice of that in. I just found it demeaning. It's horrible.
When we look at the whole report, it's a very personal report, isn't it, about your current living situation, about your parents and the fact that what their job was, what happened during your childhood, you know, moving from place to place with their work. We can take that down now, please. The impact of that on you, just on a very personal level, what sense did you have of that, or how did you react to that when you were reading these reports?
It just felt deeply intrusive and completely unnecessary, even on what SDS said their purpose was. Like, what relevance did it have? It didn't have any relevance on anything. It was just deeply intrusive and demeaning, and, you know, that it's kind of just sitting there somewhere and who knows what is seeing all this information about me. It's horrible. It's genuinely horrible.
In respect of HN81's departure, you say in your witness statement that his story was that he was going back to Herefordshire. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my understanding, yeah.
Do you recall him leaving suddenly, without explanation, as described by Alex Owolade last week, or did you see that as quite a gradual removal of himself from MFJ?
There was a disengage. I mean, the stuff that happened in Bermondsey was kind of I think a flashpoint. And I mean, we definitely would have questioned his politics after that. We would have kind of. It was very anti what MFJ stood for, everything that he did.
You're talking about the anti-fascist demonstration in Bermondsey.
That was a point of quite extreme political difference that we would have had to have out with him. From that moment, he was coming to less. And I remember I'd be calling him to try and get him to come to something, and he wouldn't come, and he just sounded really depressed. And then he said he was going, and that's why, you know, I said, oh, meet me, you know, come and I'll see you. And we met in Victoria. My experience was after that, I think he was gone after that.
Did you meet him after that at all?
No.
Even on a brief occasion?
No. I did. I thought about him over the years. I wondered what happened to him. I was generally worried that, I mean, he had the demeanour of someone who was potentially suicidal, to be honest, and that's worrying.
Can we display, please, MPS 0748738 at page 58? This is HN81's account to this inquiry, and it addresses his withdrawal. So paragraph 186, please. So his exfiltration. Could you just read through that, please? And does that accord with what you understood was happening at that time when he was leaving MFJ?
Yeah, I don't recall Canada or Ireland ever being in the picture. But yeah, it's probably an accurate account of that.
So you recall him going back to Hereford?
Yeah, that was my understanding of what he was doing. I can't remember if there was some family reason why he was going back. My general impression, it was, he was just very, very depressed and disillusioned.
I'd like to ask you just about the recommendation for commendation in the file note that we saw earlier, MPS 0728625 at page 3. So this is a recommendation for commendation of HN81, dated the 2nd of October 2001. And you can see that it sets out essentially the main highlights of his deployment in the first paragraph, and then it goes on to bullet point 3 particular key successes from his operation, or 3 broad areas. The first highlights the provision of high-grade preemptive intelligence on a range of local extreme left-wing groups. Was he engaged, as far as you recall, with any other groups other than MFJ?
He used to, his leanings was more anarchist than most other people in Movement for Justice. So he would report on things and take our flyers to the anarchist book fair, which we wouldn't go to, or he told us about a Reclaim the Street demonstration once. So he may have still maintained some contact with those milieus, those groups. But I wasn't aware of him being an active member in any other group.
It talks about those groups looking to foment unrest and violence over issues such as the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. And he provided borough commanders, particularly at Brixton and Tottenham, with daily indications of the political temperature and guidance on the relative merits of courses of police action. You've commented on that to some degree in your evidence today, and as I understand your evidence is that your group, at least, MFJ, was not looking to foment unrest and violence over issues such as the Stephen Lawrence inquiry.
No, and what a complete waste of money. Daily indications of the political temperature and guidance on the relative merits of courses of police action. What an utter waste of resources. There were countless people telling the police what they were doing wrong with the black community. There were countless people saying what was happening. They could have got our flyers at our stalls, and I remember uniformed officers picking up our flyers from the floor if they found one at our street stall. It's just an offensive waste of money.
Bullet point 3, please. He was thus debriefed thoroughly by the Stephen Lawrence review team, which is what we were just talking about in relation to feeding information to Richard Walton. As it considered how the MPS might regain the confidence of the black community and how it might assess the potential for disorder by sections of that community and what might be the consequences of sustained political pressure on the MPS from hard left and other groups not well disposed to the police. Again, is that something where you would say there's plenty of people available that would be able to give an informed insight into this area?
It was in all our flyers, all our publicity. It was in the monthly meetings of the police consultative group. This was absolutely nothing more than reputation management for the police, and yeah.
You've suggested that some of the reports seem quite dehumanising. What impact overall has your reading of this had on you now that you've been able to see all of the disclosure that's been provided to you?
Well, it's horrible. I spent, essentially, I got all the disclosure. Sorry.
Don't worry. Take your time and have a glass of water or something.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no need for you to jump to an answer. And if you'd like me to pause now, I'll rise for a moment or two and gladly do so.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Got all the disclosure, I think, over Christmas. And was given this deadline to respond to hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents. I spent 2 months. The first 2 months, I decided I couldn't intensively read these documents until I had gone through all of the, tucked away documents that I possessed and devised a timeline for all of our work over that period, because I you can't remember those things. So I went through, I gathered all the documents I could find, organised them into date order, did a timeline, and then I comprehensively read through these documents, essentially every weekend for like 4 months. That's what I was doing, alongside a really intense, emotionally and physically demanding full-time job. And I remember when I first became aware of Hagen, and it was around the time of Hearn and Ellison, and all these news reports were coming out about this terrible, violent, subversive group that was the real intended target, that was a danger to everyone. And I remember just being like, have I forgotten something? Like, is there something about what Movement for Justice did that could possibly be described in those terms? Now, I knew we were the group, right? And I knew it was really common for us to be called a violent group because of By Any Means Necessary. It's why we explained it so often in the materials you've seen. We had to explain it because it's commonly misunderstood. So I knew it was us. And, now realising that during Hearn and Ellison and seeing some of the reports in that, that family campaigns were being met with by the police and were being told that the real target was this violent, subversive group, and maybe shown some of these documents. And then reading these documents that bear no relation to the reality of our politics and what we did and what we achieved during that period. And I'm very, very proud of the work we did during that period. It is horrible. It is genuinely horrible. And, that label, violent, subversive, is on me now. And it bears no relation to who I am and the work that I've done and the commitment that I have made in my life to stand against injustice and against racism. So yeah, it was exhausting and draining, and then being given these deadlines by the inquiry. I'm trying to write this true history of what happened. It was horrible. It was genuinely overwhelming and horrible and exhausting, absolutely exhausting. Yeah.
Do you think now, looking back in hindsight, that actually HN81's deployment into MFJ did have an impact on MFJ's work, whether negative or positive? Do you think he influenced what you were able to achieve or not achieve?
No, not at all. He was absolutely peripheral to what we did. Our mission remained the same from Movement for Justice's inception to when I left in 2022. It may have, at different times, we focused on different things, and that was the nature of like the people who came around Movement for Justice. People would bring things to us and we would campaign on it. And, after this period, the period where we had to fight after Alex was sacked, and we fought so hard, incredibly intense period for everyone and for Alex personally, to try and get him reinstated, and we won the We won the tribunal, we won massive change in Lambeth Council, we instituted a public inquiry in Lambeth Council that actually we used to insist happened in the evening so that people could actually attend, and we made sure the community catered it, so we always had a packed public gallery that found that Lambeth was institutionally racist. Like, we achieved so much, but it was exhausting, that period. After that, we did do a lot of focus on we were doing a lot more on immigration, detention, deportation, asylum seekers. But that was just, and that reflected the increased anti-immigrant sentiment. I mean, the Labour Party detention mushroomed from like virtually one detention centre to 17 detention centres at one point. People detained who are not criminals, just for being undocumented. So we did focus on that a lot more than police brutality and racist attacks. But I think that whole movement during the whole period of the 90s, it was successful at pushing back the fascists, at pushing back the racists, at making it known that the police are institutionally racist, making people afraid to be racist. No, people didn't want to be racist. We're now seeing a reversal of that. And you know, we're seeing more of the kind of things we witnessed in the 90s happening, racially motivated rapes and attacks and brutality and constant stream of just racist rhetoric from the far right, who are mainstream. Sorry that I've gone off on one.
That's okay. I had asked you whether HN81 had made an impact back in the day. Is there any? I don't have any further questions for you, but is there anything else that you want to say to the inquiry to make sure that we've got your evidence in as full form as possible?
I want to make the point again that I made earlier, that the whole premise of the reason for the SDS spying on black family justice campaigns and family justice campaigns is the Movement for Justice, is this violent subversive organisation, that is just absolutely untrue, and that the apologies given to those families are not worth the paper they are written on, because they maintain that lie. And even Hagan's own reporting shows that they're not true. And I hope that's what I've shown.
Thank you. So, as far as I'm aware, there are no Rule 10s, but if you wish to rise, we can.
I'd better rise for a moment or two to make sure of that, and there may be some re-examination.
Ms Doyle. Just one point of clarification. It's in relation to the Stephen Lawrence campaign. I asked you whether, given that you don't recall any specific contact between members of the MFJ and Lawrence family members, whether you agreed that it would be inaccurate to describe HN81 as a spy in the Lawrence family camp. Mm-hmm. And you accepted that, but then we had a short discussion about whether there was a distinction between the Lawrence family camp, the Lawrence Stephen Lawrence campaign, and obviously we've heard some evidence about the Stephen Lawrence support groups and the Stephen Lawrence inquiry itself, and you weren't aware or understood there was any real distinction between those, and I suggested to you that you were unable to help us with that point then. Mm-hmm. Can I just clarify, is it right that given that description, which is a description used by Ellison, that you are not able to assist the inquiry in terms of that particular description of HN81? Would that be fair to say?
No, I think it's the way it's worded. Because it's worded in the Lawrence family camp. I don't think he wasn't in the Lawrence family campaign, but he was absolutely reporting on the activities of the Lawrence family campaign group. I'm not sure, I don't quite know the difference between those things, but he was reporting extensively on the Lawrence inquiry and the meetings that I can't remember, but I assume Neville Lawrence was at, Suresh Grover was at, where they were talking about the inquiry and tactics, and and he was feeding into the actual Lawrence inquiry. So I would say he was absolutely a spy in the Lawrence inquiry and on the Lawrence family and the campaign around Stephen Lawrence. That's patently true because he was advising people who were writing, the police submission for the Lawrence report.
It's
just the wording of that Lawrence family camp. Dave Hagen wasn't close, he wasn't in meetings in their home or anything like that. So I think it's that distinction, if that makes sense.
So it's your evidence that he wasn't physically there present in the home, or wasn't in amongst the family members itself?
That's
what I mean. A fair reflection of your evidence?
Yeah.
But in terms of the wider campaign, the support groups, the inquiry, he was reporting on that sort of thing?
Yeah, extensively reporting on it.
I think that clarifies the point for us. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So there may be some re-examination.
I only have one matter ready to deal with, you boys. You came this morning and you told me that the note that you had with you contained a number of questions or matters that you wanted to ensure that Sir John knew about, and that you would tick them off as you went through them during the course of the day. And I just want to ask you to take the opportunity now to go through, and if there is anything left on the table that you want to give him after an exhausting day, please do so now, and then it'll be over.
Thank you. Just looking at my list. I think most of it was covered. Two things which weren't covered. One was, and which I think expose kind of the racism and the focus of SDS, which was the campaign, the demonstration that we held, the march we held in North London, which brought together the black community and the Turkish Kurdish community in a united march against disappearances in Turkey. It was the Saturday mothers who were fighting around disappearances in Turkey and deaths in police custody and racist attacks. And we had a very vibrant, very integrated, the first ever of that kind of march that brought those two communities together. And we brought those two communities together in the wake of what happened with the Broomfield 3, I think, as well. and it was such an important demonstration. Like, we considered that demonstration such a success for our politics. It was absolutely what we were trying to do. We were trying to bring people together in a united struggle, that we shouldn't be fighting each other, that we should be fighting together for a better life, a better future, for justice. And Hagen reports on that as being a fatal error, a terrible mistake for the movement for justice, because, you know, it wasn't militant enough for the young black people on the march, and we would drive the young black people who we were trying to recruit away. To me, that just shows the fundamental error at the heart of all of this when it comes to these reports on what we are. That was an incredible moment, an incredible historic moment for that community, and everyone on that march recognized that. Our aim was never militancy or violence for the sake of militancy or violence, or to create some sort of terror for revolution or whatever, all that nonsense. It was building a united, integrated civil rights movement, fighting on multiple fronts. And again, when I say fighting, I don't mean fisticuffs with the police. I mean fighting for justice, fighting for equality, fighting for freedom, fighting for human rights, civil rights. And I think that incident and that report really that struck me as the most emblematic of the kind of SDS delusion. He wanted us to be obsessed with violence. He wanted us to be obsessed with encouraging black youth to be violent. Right? He wanted us to be that, but we weren't that. We weren't that. And that's the fundamental SDS delusion. And I want to kind of, I actually want to end with kind of a quote. I want to say this quote because this is from Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail, which we studied. I mean, we studied this stuff in Movement for Justice, and we studied the civil rights movement. And this letter from a Birmingham jail we came across, we did a lot of, because it kind of, it summarized our perspective. And it was a letter because Martin Luther King, he was engaged in he was filling the jails of Birmingham, resisting Jim Crow. And they were facing down water cannons and police violence, and they were marching into those police lines with incredible courage. And a group of so-called white progressives in the Christian movement wrote a letter to him saying that he was being too violent. He was being too aggressive, that this was too much. These were people who were supposedly on the side of anti-racism. And he wrote this letter from a Birmingham. He wrote it while he was in jail. And I'm just going to read one little bit of it. Actually, we who engage in non-violent direct action are not the creators of tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. We bring it out into the open, where it can be seen and dealt with, like a boil that can never be cured so long as it is covered up, but must be opened with all its ugliness to the natural medicines of air and light. Injustice must be exposed, with all the tension its exposure creates, to the light of human conscience and the air of national opinion before it can be cured. That's it in a nutshell. That's Movement for Justice in a nutshell. That's what we were doing. We did not shy away from speaking truth to power. We did not shy away from the legitimate anger of victims of racism and police violence. It was not our job to calm people down and tell people to be quiet and wait for some later date or some faraway court hearing or the possibility of a public inquiry in the future. That was not our job. Our job was to expose the truth of the racism that people were suffering and bring it to the air of national opinion. That's why we engaged in the Lawrence inquiry, because that's what the Lawrence inquiry did. It brought that truth to the surface. I wish it had brought more truth to the surface. I wish it had investigated what happened to Roland Adams' investigation. Why was only one person convicted of that murder? I wish it had investigated Stephen Lawrence was not an aberration. It was not a one-off. It was a pattern. And that's why the Stephen Lawrence inquiry attracted so much of the public interest, why those women went every single day. That's what it was. And that's what Movement for Justice was concerned to do. We had absolutely no intention of why would we? It's core to our belief that these things should be exposed. And on that point, I want to, I got emotional today, and this has been a difficult process for me, but I'm very glad to have done it, and I want this inquiry to tell the truth, and I want to just pay homage to the women who were abused by these spy cops, who were abused and tricked and just treated unimaginable cruelty, and their determination to expose the truth, their determination to not give up, to keep pushing at it. And it's those people who keep pushing at it, who keep exposing, who keep speaking the truth in the face of people telling them that they're troublemakers, that they're, causing a problem, that they're too violent. Those people are the ones who make history and make change. And I really want to pay homage to all of those people and what has been achieved. And I'm immensely proud of everything that we did and in Movement for Justice, and everything that we achieved, and the people that we helped along the way, the people that we empowered along the way to know that they weren't alone and that their anger was justified. It's absolutely justified. And I'm going to end there.
Thank you very much. That concludes my questions.
Thank you. Thank you for the immense trouble that you took to draft your witness statement, which was immensely detailed and careful. I won't offer you a pointless apology for the difficulty of the task. The inquiry legal team do their best to make it possible for lay people such as yourself to respond constructively to questions which I ultimately have to try and answer. And therefore to offer you an apology for it would be, I think, both pointless and demeaning, and I refrain from doing that. But I hope you understand their approach and why they've adopted it, and I'm very, very grateful to you for taking the immense trouble to respond constructively to their questions. And likewise, I am well aware that spending a day giving evidence in a room like this in front of a whole lot of people about experiences that were troubling for you is not easy, and I'm very grateful to you for taking the effort to do that and for fulfilling that purpose with commendable force and determination. Thank you.
Okay.
You want that, don't you? There you go. Right. You can head to the room if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. Yes. Yes.